by Scott Channel, author of Setting Sales Appointments and 7 Steps to Sales Scripts for B2B Appointment Setting. He is a lead generation and sales script writing expert, and before he started teaching others, he actually did it. In 1994, he completed his first prospecting project and learned his script writing craft by personally dialing and setting more than 2,000 C-level appointments. He's been specializing in B2B appointment setting and lead generation ever since, and his experience in both the B2B and B2C worlds provides a well-rounded perspective. He has used it to help small businesses improve their prospecting results. Scott, if you are ready, I will hand it over to you.
I am, Julie. Thank you very much, and thanks for attending the webinar. Man, a lot we want to cover in a short period of time, so I want to bump through it. I want to just give you a little bit more information so you see where I'm coming from. Before I started working in the B2B world, I had a marketing agency where I specialized in professional services marketing. So it was basically lawyers and accountants, and I did all sort of the normal marketing stuff in terms of newsletters and so forth. And then by accident, I got a project in the early 90s that involved setting appointments for a home heating oil company, if you can believe it, up and down the East Coast. They were very successful. And then from there, I worked with a company that sold to companies that had at least 1,000 employees, and they had been unsuccessful at connecting with executive level VPs. And I had no clue what I was doing at that level, but I did know how to test, and I did have a good solid grounding of marketing principles. And that's one of the concepts that I want you to absorb today, is that all we're doing is taking tried and true, long-standing marketing and sales principles and applying them to prospecting. There are no special rules for prospecting. So I learned my craft by calling very large companies, connecting with executive level VPs, and then enabling them to agree to meet with a company that they had never heard of before. So I personally set more than 2,000 B2B appointments. When I did it, my paycheck depended upon those meetings converting. So what I'm going to teach you or relate to you is not theory to me, because when I did it, it had to work or I didn't get paid. So I didn't have the luxury for theory. And then wrote the first book in 2004, Setting Appointments, which was outlined the whole process. The script book was 3 years ago. And although I cut my teeth in a very large B2B environment, it's really the concepts of how you engage with a qualified target, a very qualified target, and enable them to conclude that you are worth more of the time. Those are universal principles I find. I find my clients, they tend to think that their industry is different. Believe me, it isn't. And even between B2B and B2C, the principles that drive success are very common. And that's really what I want you to get out of here, is I think that sometimes many people limit their thinking, oh, I'm B2B or B2C, and we're going to talk about qualified prospects, but I have many clients who use these same principles not only to clone their best accounts from non-inquirers, from strangers, but also who might just use it to get more business from current accounts. If they have to resell or upsell, you've got to be able to enable a current client to meet with you. Maybe you've got previous clients, dissatisfied accounts even, that you want to reactivate. You want to engage people who could send you business and referrals. When they do send you those referrals, you've got to enable those referred to say, hey, this is somebody who's worth going to the next step with, a phone call, a meeting, or whatever. Those are referred. So the principles that I'm going to talk to you about are not just for calling strangers, okay, on a cold call or a somewhat warm call, but in all of those circumstances. And I have clients who, some businesses who are strictly cold calling as their prime way of getting business. You know, others, it might be the other objectives that they're doing. And if cold calling is a part of it, it's only a small part of it. So please don't limit your thinking in terms of B2B, B2C, small business, or big business. A couple things I want you to keep in mind that's really, really important is that you are calling peer-to-peer here. It is, if you got a business and you have a great business and you offer a good product and you've got satisfied clients, it is the most normal, natural thing in the world, okay, that you should be calling other business owners. Or if you've got employees working for you who are doing that, it is the most normal, natural thing that they should be calling others and relating to them what you do and why you benefit others, and asking them for a next step, asking them for some of their time. And you shouldn't be shy about it. Personally, I'm a big believer in being very, very, very direct about things. I think that people confuse being direct with being salesy or being pushy or something like that, and that is absolutely not the case. I believe that you are being less salesy when if you just lay it out there so that people can understand it. They can understand it, grasp it, and say yes or no. Yes or no are perfectly fine answers that you can get. So, you know, one of the things that I believe in, I find that when people call me, usually the first thing they want to talk about are scripts. And I gulp a little bit because scripts are not one of your drivers of success. So your scripts are kind of like the tip of the iceberg. And I deal with a lot of businesses who, if you have your fundamentals in place, your scripts can be average or even below average. And you're going to run circles around the competition simply because, you know, you're working a process and a system that is substantive. So your scripts are really the tip of the iceberg. They have to be decent, but understand that if your process or if your fundamental system is not good, then you can have the best scripts in the world and you're going to get absolutely nowhere. So let me give you some of the rules to prosper. First of all, biggest mistake. I get called in all the time for call centers or companies who their system isn't working. They say, can you help me? And by far, the biggest mistake I see is that people are calling the wrong targets. And it kind of amazes me, to tell you the truth, because when I think of the limited time that companies have to call, and that it's not an exaggeration to say that I see people spending 70, 80, or 90% of their call time or their call investment to people who never should be called, where people who look exactly like their best clients, okay, by every mean, you know, the AA prospects, so to speak, are sitting there staring at the phone waiting for a call that never comes. So first rule is that you need to spend just a couple of hours really making sure that you are always allocating your time to where it's going to do you the most good. You know, a lot of people fall into this, oh, I don't want to miss anyone, you never know type thing. But what it means is that with your limited time and your limited money that you have is being allocated to lower probability or no probability targets, heaven forbid. And you always want to make sure that your limited time and resources are going to your highest probability targets. Velocity, meaning that you know, you need to move through a group with a certain level of speed. And I find that this is not often talked about, because when you work through a group, there's only so many people who you're going to be able to reach. There's only so many people who need what you offer, and you've got to move through a group with a certain efficiency. So when we talk about process a little bit, what I tell people is you've got to dump them into the funnel, you've got to work them in some sort of organized manner, and then you've got to let them go, okay? Because if you just dump people into the funnel and you just never let them go, then you have a traffic jam, and you're just always talking to the same olds. And once you reach the people who can be reached, and you reach the people who do have a need that you can fulfill, you know, you need to talk to, I always used to refer to it as fresh meat, okay, to find people who have needs. So another important thing is keep it going in terms of your system, but focus on the buyers only. I will tell you that I'm often surprised that people seem to spend a lot more time worrying about the non-buyers and the people who don't need them and the people who aren't going to be responding and the people who aren't reachable, and they do worry about the buyers. And I'll share with you a fear when I call, and it's always a fear that I share with my clients today, is when you call, and you finally get somebody, I don't care whether it's a client or an ex-client or a high probability prospect, it's difficult to get somebody to pick up the phone. And when they do pick up the phone, at that moment, you don't know, particularly if it's a non-client or a prospect, do they have a need that you can fulfill? You don't know that. And they don't know if they're looking for a vendor and they're looking for a new source of supply, they don't know that you're a great source that could help them out. So my fear was always I was going to call, work my butt off, okay, or one of my clients can work their butt off, and then they do get somebody who's looking for a vendor who would welcome them as a source of supply, who needs what they say, and that person doesn't say the things that enables that person to say, whoa, here's someone who can help me. I'm dissatisfied with my source of supply. I'm dissatisfied with my current vendor. I'm going to listen a little bit more. So my fear was always, having worked so hard to get them to pick up the phone, that I would not say the things that buyers need to hear, to listen a little bit longer. They listen a little bit longer and you say the things they need to hear in order for them to conclude to say, you know what, I'm going to spend more time with this person, either another phone call, a discovery call, maybe a face-to-face meeting. So be fearful that when you do get somebody great to pick up the phone, that you don't say the right things. A lot of people worry about, oh, I don't want to be salesy, I don't want this, I don't want people to think that. Focus on the buyers only. And if you do that, you're going to get the best results. Rule of 7, basic marketing principle, is that when you're interacting with someone, that you need to touch them a certain number of times before you start to get their attention. So if you believe that, which I do, that means whether the number of calls or the number of interactions, you can't do it once or twice and then quit, because you're not even in the zone where you could expect to get results. So whether you're calling, whether you're mailing, whatever you're doing, the rule of 7 says you've got to do so multiple times to even be in the zone where you could expect to get success. And let me also mention something else, that although we're talking about sales scripts in the phone today, I really want you to encourage everyone here to think about their calling program, however you use it, as part of an overall effective marketing program. So prospecting by phone, calling by phone is not your marketing program, or should not be, but it should be part of an overall effective plan, and kind of keep that in mind. So other parts have to work with you. Now, everyone's heard of the 80-20 rule, but I've always often thought of the 80-20 rule as approaching the phone as a twist, because, okay, if 80% of our results come as a result of 20% of our effort, everybody tends to believe that. But one of the great things about calling is that, guess what? You don't have to spend that time where 80% of your time only gets 20% of your results. Because if you are defining who to call and you're calling them in a systematic manner, you can eliminate all that time that's going to people where you get disproportionately less of a result, and you can purposely choose, if you're calling correctly with the right process, to make sure that you're always in that zone where, the 20% of your time gets the 80% of your results. You can choose to stay in that zone 100% of the time, and it's very, very important that you do. The other rule that I believe in is that value knocks down doors. And what I mean by that is that if you're communicating value from the point of the view of the person you're talking to, that's enough to win all the time. And I happen to believe in value. So when I called and worked the phone, and maybe you get a little bit here, I don't have a great personality, okay? So I was more like, understand how value is defined by my client's buyers, and then communicate that value extremely effectively and directly, and let it do its work. So I'm not into talking about social stuff, the weather, the Red Sox, any of that stuff. I can't do it. Some people do. And I always believed in value. And the last point I want to leave you with, and this is very important and goes understated, is people think about the phone call being successful when you connect and you get that next meeting or that discovery call. But the reality is that most of the phone calls that we make, we're not going to speak to whoever it is we're trying to reach. But that does not mean that it cannot be a successful call. If you can extract some information as to whether someone's a buyer, what do they buy a little, do they buy a lot? Are they going to buy now? Are they going to buy later? Are there bid dates, or are there times when contracts are up? Then you can allocate your time, and I'd like you to write that down for time allocation. So you can decide to spend less time with certain aspects or groups of the people that you call. And everybody talks about qualifying, but one of my core principles and one of the things I really, really believe and see is that those who actively disqualify, meaning you're not trying to keep every target alive, you're trying to find a reason to kill it, okay? Because you've got far more people usually who you could call than you have time to call. So the faster you can eliminate somebody from your call queue, that automatically means that more and more of your time is going to go to higher probability targets. And I kind of want you to think about the big picture here. When people do not disqualify actively, what that means is that as they call, and they keep calling back low probability, no probability people, low value people, more and more call time goes to people who the odds are less and less that you're going to be successful or it's going to be worth your time. Whereas if you have on your radar who you're looking for, who your clients are, and who are low probability and no probability targets, and very aggressively eliminate them from your queue, that means your limited time, your limited money, whether it's yourself or whether you're hiring people, you want always to be making sure that more and more of your time, that the greatest percentage of your time is in what I call the high probability zone. High probability targets, higher value targets, and that you're calling them effectively. So even when you don't get somebody to pick up the phone, you can find out info. Do they buy what you offer? Are they going to buy it in the future? And when I end this call, I'm going to give you the magic question. The magic question. And in fact, the reason I'm on this call is because somebody who had read my material picked up this tip and found that it was core on top of everything that Tab taught him to getting a lot of value, and that person is one of the top Tab people. So let's go on to the next slide. And big picture, I want to tell you that, you know, we get all highfalutin about what we're trying to do, and we parse the details, and we think about the scripts. But you know what we're trying to do is, all we're trying to do with our time is to pick a group of targets and work them in a manner so that we increase the odds that we bump into more high probability targets. And when we do bump into them, don't screw it up. So what I mean by that is organize your time, work a system so in a calculated manner, it is much more likely that you're going to bump into more and more highly valuable, worthwhile targets. And oh, by the way, when you do bump into them, don't mess it up. Meaning, be prepared, be direct, have something to say that your targets consider to be valuable that enable them to conclude that you're worth more of their time. And then I'll also say, in my feeling was, when I called, and I still believe today, core principle, the buyers are out there. For my clients, they're buying from someone else, and if my client doesn't bump into them, guess what? They're gonna buy from a competitor shortly down the road. So they are out there, and all I do is I don't look to convince, and I would not encourage you in your scripting to try to convince anybody of anything, but to when you bump into people that have it within them to consider, entertain, review what it is that you offer, what you're really trying to do is to bring that out. So my personal philosophy was, I was never trying to instill something in people that was not there, because I want to close, not just meet people who aren't going to buy stuff. But my attitude was, the buyers are out there, and when I bump into them, I want to activate or make stronger their current need of dissatisfaction or willingness to review something, because those people are much more likely to be buyers. So think of your buyers. So don't screw it up when you're calling. Now, as we go into the last 10 minutes, I want to just give you a little bit about call process. And I want to tell you this, that your call process is where the rubber meets the road, okay? Because if you're working a good call process and you are set up to work efficiently, and I see this all the time, where people who maybe have average scripts or even less than average scripts, because they have a great call process, they're interacting with more qualified people and they're getting more wins simply because their process, the strength of their process is enabling them to interact with many more high qualified people. And so you have a good call process, you can figure out the rest. But if you don't have a good call process, you're always going to be trying too hard to get defective calls or to convince people who are not your clients, so to speak, over the line. And the problem with that is those tend not to be great clients. You tend to have not much to work with and focus too much on pricing when you do that. So if you have a good strong call process, you're always going to give yourself a steady stream of good people who look like your best clients, and you can sell to your strengths. Obviously, you have limited time. You have to focus on the highest probability. And by the way, it only takes about 2 hours worth of time to research and get a really decent handle on your highest probability targets. And I'm always amazed at the people who will spend hours and hours or invest tons of dough to call, and yet they don't spend the 2 hours to really make sure that all that effort in money investment is going to the highest probability group. You have to do that. Get recon and increase the odds of conversation as you go. Not only when you call do you have to plan out to say, hey, how am I going to ask or determine if they buy what I offer or may buy it in the future? And if they buy it, are they going to buy a little? Are they going to buy a lot? Are they going to buy it now? Are they going to buy it 6 months from now? You have to have a plan to do that. The other thing you want to achieve is that as you call, by far the highest odds of you getting a conversion or a next step is when you speak to your peer, you speak to your decision maker, you speak to your fellow business owner. And even if you don't speak to them, you want to increase the odds of that happening in the future. And I will give you one tip, that what you always want to try to do with every call is to get the direct dial or extension number. So when I called and what I've taught is, even when you don't speak to someone, you want to get recon as to value, increase the odds of the conversation. And by far the biggest factor of getting somebody to pick up the phone is to get the direct dial and extension number. In fact, I just read a study last week with a large organization that had studied this, and they found that their most successful prospectors were people who had the greatest percentages of records in their contact manager with direct dial and extension numbers. So keep that in mind. You've got to sort as you go in terms of buy, not buy, buy a little, buy a lot. I believe in the 3 cycles of 3, meaning that we know from studies that when you call, it takes an average of 9 to 12 dials to one person in order to get them to pick up the phone. So there's not 9 or 12 dials to 9 or 12 different people to get one person to pick up the phone. I want you to think of, hey, I'm selecting this target. My plan is that I'm going to make a minimum of 9 dials over a period of 2 weeks in what I call 3 cycles of 3, so that you place three dials. At the end of that each 3 dials, you leave what I call touches, which is voicemail or email for most of us. And then at the end of the 3 cycles of 3, you can say, hey, I made 9 dials. I'm in the zone where I made enough effort. I wasn't able to get a hold of them. Maybe they're not reachable. I left 3 great voicemails. I sent 3 great emails. I haven't got hold of them. So now I'm at the point of diminishing returns. And, the people who sell the most, interesting to me, are people who are great at knowing who not to continue with. Not the great closers, but the people who don't waste their time and who know, hey, I'm at the point where it's not worth it for me to spend any more time here. So I'm going to put this record in a different place, call them in 6 months, maybe not call them at all, and they will make the decisions. The people who struggle are the ones that are always trying to keep people alive, and what that means is that a greater percentage of the people that they're interacting with are in what I call low probability land. So you're always trying to reallocate your time, dump the low value in the low probability people. Now, as we get into the scripts, and I want to run through it, I'm going to run it 2 minutes over for your questions. I want you to think of your scripts as sections that you need to prepare great scripts by creating what I call a pile of words. So you're going to break your scripts into sections. It's the first 3 seconds and then the full 30 seconds. And I want you to think of your script as the foundation for your sale. And the only sale that you are making on these calls is for a meeting, for a next step, for a discovery call. You're not trying to sell your offering. In fact, it's a mistake to try to sell your offering. So for the core initial 30-second pitch, I selected a couple of examples here, and I'm going to run through them. And then what I want you to think of when you hear these scripts is not so much the exact words, but I want you to get a sense of the structure of the scripts and the component parts. You'll notice when you open up, if you're talking to a buyer, they need to know who you are and where you're calling from in a simple, direct statement. And remember when I said before, you got to think about the buyers only? Well, if someone has a dissatisfaction or they're thinking of changing vendors, it's got to immediately connect with them. Oh, hey, this company sells widgets. I need widgets. I don't really like my widget vendor. You know what? Boom, maybe I'm going to listen a little bit longer. Then you've got to tell them why you're credible, because one of the things that's different from when I started today is people have easy access to information. And, you know, most of the people are overcalled. Most of the people who call them, quite frankly, are not good at it and waste their time. So you know what? If you've got a history, if you're top shelf, people know that they don't have to waste their time with callers. All they have to do is, with a few keystrokes, they can pick their own top-notch vendors. So it's really, really important that if you've got a history, great results, you're top tier, you've been recognized, you've got to lay what I call a credibility statement in there. So they go, ooh, maybe this isn't somebody that would be so easy to find on a Google search. I'm going to listen a little bit longer. You've got to speak about the benefits from their point of view. Think of the value exchange. You know, I always thought of appointment setting or trying to sell next steps as a value exchange. We're asking them for time, and we have to communicate what they're going to get for that time, even if they do not buy from us. Okay, so if you are communicating a value that's worth their time, even if they don't buy, guess what? You get a lot more next steps. And then along the way, in terms of your preparation, you have to practice how to ask, and you have a lot of supporting material in terms of specifics, proofs, data that you may weave into your scripts, your discovery calls, your first meetings. And then my ear candy section is just kind of like my catch-all that says, oh, sometimes I hear great phrases that are super in a script, or you might use in a discovery call or a peer-to-peer call or a first meeting. I don't know where to put it. So in terms of your preparation, you want to write it down. And I will tell you that good scripts come from good preparation. And scripts themselves are just preparation. You've got very limited time. You know, the idea that you're going to wing it on the phone with somebody, you know, who could be a great client for you, and you're going to magically pick out of the air on different calls the exact words to say in a crisp, clear way, that's ridiculous to me. So script writing is simply preparing the best words to use to achieve your business objective in an environment where you have very limited time. So let me give you, I was going to give you 2 script samples. I'm going to give you one based upon time. So I just want you to kind of listen to this, so that the structure. This is somebody you're targeting picks up the phone, and you might say something like this. Hey, this is Lee from Super Services. We specialize in developing web-based education programs. Companies such as HV, Micro Squishy, Brighto Unlimited, they've chosen us to get 30% sales growth, expanded market share, deployment in about 10 weeks. If you might be open to reviewing some options and strategies, love to introduce myself, share some specific case studies and examples as to how those results were achieved. You'll definitely learn a few things. Hope you think of us in the future. Would you have some time in the next week or two? So that's an example of a structure. Lee from Super Services. We specialize in developing web-based education programs. Boom, very clear what they do. Credibility, 3 big names. Use them. Oh, they must be good, and there's many different ways to communicate credibility. And then you mentioned benefits, 30% sales growth, expanded market share, deployment, things that mattered to them. So you're not talking about yourself. It's not you. You're talking about them and the things that are going to grab them and go, ooh, I want those things. Then you kind of change gears. Hey, if you're open to reviewing some options and strategies, I find people love options and strategies. Introduce myself. I want to share specific case studies and examples. Why should people meet with you? To get something, even if they don't buy. So if they're curious, they want to learn what competitors are doing, they want some new ideas, I want you to think about what you can deliver at that meeting, even if they don't buy from you. Would you have some time in the next week or two? Boom, that's your question. When it comes to objections, I just want to tell you that, in fact, if you go to my website, scottchannel.com, there's a ton of free information there, but the examples I would give you in terms of how to handle objections are built from the foundation I just gave you, and you only really need to be prepared for a couple of objections, because if you get a few of them prepared, you're ready for every variation. There's essentially we're all set, and then the send some information objection is in a slightly different class. And I just want to end up with one really key thing that you can use right now today on your calls, and it was the thing that the TAB member who got such great results using me said was so instrumental to him on top of all the stuff that TAB taught. It's just this. I want you to think about it. You know, you do all the work to determine who's best to call. You've set up a great system. You work that system, okay? You get somebody who looks just like your best client, and you've prepared this great 30-second script, and you deliver this script, and they listen to it and go, nope. And then you take that objection, and you've prepared for it because you've heard that objection a lot, and you deliver your carefully prepared response to that objection, and they go, nope. And instead of leaving the call at that time, you've got to end it. I call it the magic question, and it's so stupid and it's so simple, and this is where most of your money is. At that point, instead of just sheepishly, and please don't ever, whatever you do, don't say, oh, is it okay if I call you in 3 months? Don't say that. That's a waste of time, and that's self-sabotage. But say this, you know what? This is the way I said it. You can add your little twist. I say, you know what? Don't want to be on your back. That's fine. But you know what? We do an awful lot of this. Could you suggest a time I should be back to you in the future? And then you do the hardest thing in the world for a salesperson to do. You shut up. And you will be surprised how many supposedly dead-end calls say, call me in a week, call me in 2 weeks, call me in a month. Sure, happy to do that. Is there a particular reason why? Yeah, we're going to spend $1 billion on this or something like that, or I'm back from vacation. And now all of a sudden, dead-end call turns into a very qualified prospect. So there's tons of details and depth here. Big picture is buyers out there, pick the right people to prospect, have a plan when you do it, organize yourself so that you bump into more people who look just like your clients. When you do bump into them, be prepared, have something that's valuable from their point of view to say, and you're going to get more next steps and constantly tweak and get where you're going. So I'm hoping that you guys have put a lot of questions in. Julie, I ran a few minutes over. I am sorry, but I'm looking forward to the questions that people have put into the system.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And no worries. You're still perfectly on time. So,
oh, okay.
We did have a question come in from Clark. And he says he really hates cold calling, and worse yet, he hates receiving cold calls. Mm-hmm. So what could you suggest to overcome this scripted approach to warm up such a call? He says, all of our targets, similar to myself, really have no time for outside intrusions and may have gatekeepers that shut you out. How do you get around them?
You don't get around it. I teach cold calling. I'm really good at it. I set more than 2,000 appointments with big companies. I don't love it. okay? And I don't even advocate it as necessarily the best tool in the toolbox. It is a tool in the toolbox. I would say to Clark, you know what, Clark, if you don't like it, if you don't want to do it, then do something else, okay? Because you have many other options. And as far as warming it up, frankly, I think that's actually a mistake, because you know what? A lot of people who don't like cold calling, you know, want to think, oh, if I send an email, or, you know, oh, gee, if I look at their website, which is a total waste of time, and, you know, pick up some tidbit, now all of a sudden my cold call becomes a warm call. Well, that's ridiculous, okay? Because substantively, you are still calling a stranger, and anything that you're going to pick up or any type of superficial communication does not magically turn a cold call with a stranger into a warm call and change your approach. I think you're better off if you're going to do it. And I find, frankly, Clark, that when people have these frustrations, when I peek under the covers, you know, I find they're calling way too many of the wrong people, that they're not working a plan, that they're scripting, they're winging their scripting, and therefore, and I find this, Clark, too, that a lot of people have great things they could be saying on the phone, great things that would show that they're credible, great specific value that they've delivered, great examples, and you know what? They use none of it. So what I would say is reevaluate the value of, quote, cold calling in your toolbox. Use it to the extent that it is makes sense for you to do. And when you do use it, if you use it at all, do it the right way, which is to cover the bases that I have outlined to you here. But we can't put lipstick on. If we put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig, okay? And if you've got a broken prospecting system, just by putting new labels on things, we don't substantively change what we're doing here. So what I would say is take a step back, decide how you're going to use it, make sure the fundamentals are in place, and then adjust as you go. Hope that's helpful.
All right, thank you, Scott. Kim has asked, what is the best way to prospect within an organization that you are a member of? For example, a member of a developers organization. And then she says, in other words, strike the balance of not being too aggressive.
Well, let's do this. First of all, in terms of buyers, I'd like, and this is maybe semantics, but I'm a big believer in being direct. And a lot of people end up costing themselves opportunities because they say, oh, I don't want to be aggressive, or oh, I don't want to be salesy. Oh, this is no matter what you do or say, you're going to call people who you are interrupting, so get over it. Okay, you are interrupting people. Get over it. And when you do that, though, the approach that is welcomed by many. Okay, so you're going to come up with an approach that's going to be welcomed by many. They're going to love. Oh, I'm glad you called. I have a need. You're a great vendor. You're just what I need. Well, that exact same approach to other people is an interruption and a total waste of time. So since we can't be mind readers, I want you to just focus on, hey, what is the message that if people as a buyer is going to enable them to understand what I do and why I can help them. So in terms of saying how you would market to organization, I would take the fundamentals that I related, meaning you still have to tell them who you are, what you're doing. You have to tell them why you're credible. You've got to mention some benefits that people you work with get, and you've got to, if they meet with you, well, what are they going to get from that meeting? So they can determine what the value exchange is. And then you have to ask. And if you have a group, I would just work in, hey, like you, I'm a member of X board, this. So I would just add that as an element, but it doesn't change fundamentally the foundation message that you want to ask. And I also want to make this point, that what I've been talking about here is the first 30 seconds of typically a 3-minute conversation. So you know what? I want you to think about component parts. So just like I mentioned that this 30-second interaction has component parts that you have to be effective, the first 30 seconds is has an objective to achieve so that those who have needs, those who are interested, those who have needs I prefer, can understand it, and then it's the foundation for a longer call. That longer call has to achieve your business objective. So I don't want people to get hung up on, oh, you know, if I'm direct and clear, somehow I'm being salesy or too aggressive. I think you're being polite and you're being professional and you're dealing with peers. Because if you're professional and if you're just very direct and very succinctly get somebody on the phone and say, hey, this is what I do, this is why I'm credible, this is why people work with me, love to share with you some information, does that make sense? To me, that's the epitome of being non-salesy and respectful to the people that you're prospecting. They can say yes or no, and I would encourage that direct approach, and I think, frankly, it's also the most considerate approach, even to the people who have no needs and for who your call is an interruption. Next question.
Okay, so Frank over in the Czech Republic has asked if you could, he was wondering if you could just repeat a little bit. You had talked about there's a really great question to ask about, you know, if they're available in the next week or next month. Could you just repeat that and kind of say again why it's important? Yes.
I call it the magic question because it's so stupid, okay, that it should work so well or turn so many dead ends. So again, you've picked the right people, work the process, call. Somebody picks up the phone, you deliver that is a buyer who looks just like your best client, good clients. You deliver your carefully structured 30-second, let's call it, set the appointment pitch. They listen to it and they go, no, I'm all set. Hearing that all set all the time, you're prepared. It's like click word, boom, and you very professionally give your response that you know most of the time works to turn that I'm all set into a next step. They go, no. So then I would say this. This was the way I did it. I said, hey, not a big deal. Don't want to be on your back. But obviously, we do an awful lot of this. Could you suggest a time I should be back in touch with you? And then you shut up. Don't add extra words. Don't drone on. Don't ramble on. Hey, don't want to be on your back. Obviously, we do an awful lot of this. Could you suggest a time I should be back in touch with you? And then shut up. And you'll be surprised how many people come back and say, call me in a week, call me in 2 weeks, call me in a month. Because if you have laid a good foundation, somebody that has a need that you can fulfill, they know exactly what you do. They know you're very credible. They want the benefits that you get for your clients. What you've communicated that they're going to get if they meet with you sounds valuable to them. So you're giving them an opportunity to, I call it, raise their hand out of the crowd. And there's more money long-term with that question than there is even in your initial set the appointment pitch, because most people who, if cold calling makes sense, are selling something that people don't buy every day. So even when you interact with someone, the odds of you hitting somebody at exactly the right time to buy is low, but 1 in 6. But it's very likely that a good number of those people will buy from a competitor 3, 6, 9, or 12 months down the road. So you've done all the work. So if they're buying into your credibility and what you do and the benefits and they want it, give them that one last final question to tell you what they want done. And you'll be surprised how many of those jump in the boat, so to speak. And about half of the people who say, call me in such and such a time, actually turn into meetings. So it's a great way to get the full value of your call, even when somebody doesn't agree to a meeting. Next question.
Okay, so Rick has asked, what suggestions for finding buyers and qualified prospects prior to that first call do you recommend?
Fantastic question. And this is where the rubber hits the road and where most people screw it up, quite frankly. I myself like to use 2 tools. There are multiple tools out there, but I happen to love Sales Genie. And what I would recommend to someone is take 30 buyers that you would like to clone. So get rid of the smaller ones and so forth. Some of your good clients, your bread and butter clients. Go into a tool like Sales Genie And there's a free version of Sales Genie you can get through most libraries called Reference USA. And I would look them up. And I would just make a note in an Excel spreadsheet as to their SIC codes, their revenue ranges, and the number of employees. And then I would go into a tool, and you look for clumps. You say, gee, most of my great clients, there's always going to be exceptions, tend to be over X number of revenue. Gee, they tend to be in these SIC code ranges. They tend to have this range of employees. So, big clue here, maybe those are the groups of people that I should call first. And then you go into Sales Genie and you say, well, how many companies are there that fit into these clumps within the area that I sell? And you get counts. If you have very few, you can call them. If you have a lot, then you have to continue to parse it down so that you only pick the best for the time and the money that that you have to prospect. So I like Sales Genie for the first cut. For when you're going deeper, it gives you great information on all companies at the SIC code, revenue range, and employee range level. It's not the tool I use to go deeper within companies. So with the larger companies, when you want to go deeper, once you say, oh, I'm calling XYZ company, Sales Genie might help you identify them. But in terms of going deeper to find out, well, who are the executives, then I use Inside View. InsideView.com. There are others that are good. I just happen to use Inside View. So those are my go-to tools to determine and pull down lists. Good question.
All right. So it looks like just have one last question, and that's actually
Sure.
from me. But
Okay.
just kind of curious if you find that there's a CRM that you really like that kind of helps you keep track of, every time you make a note with somebody, or every time you make contact, and the best way to kind of keep track of all of these things. Is there a certain platform you found that works best for that?
ACT, ACT, particularly for smaller companies. One of the things that I cringe at, quite frankly, is, if you do not have a contact manager, then don't even bother trying. It's like going swimming with 5 weight belts wrapped around your stomach. You're not going anywhere. You need to pick the right tool. You need to use it. I find that a lot of people will call me, and I don't know what it is, what people think about shiny knobs and the newest on the block. But myself, I just want to use a tool that's been around, it's tried and true, that if, it's easy to learn how to use it. I can find people who are familiar with it. When the inevitable technical glitches or changes come up, I want to know that there's plenty of people who are familiar with it and that it's user-friendly and I can customize it for my use. And flat out, period, as far as I'm concerned, there's no second or third choice. You can tell I have a bias particularly for smaller companies. I would use ACT. And in fact, if you go to my website, scottchannel.com, 2 T's, 2 N's, and 2 L's.com, I just did an interview with my ACT consultant talking about what you need to look for in a contact manager or CRM, kind of common mistakes that people make, what the core features are, and the considerations in picking the right one. Because I see a lot of good people who work hard who pick the wrong platform, and they're dead. They're dead before they even start, and they don't know it. Because they pick something that's either too expensive, too complicated, and they can't modify it to fit their needs. So, and I will also say to anybody, if you have a question or something you think of, go to the website, drop me a note. I will get back to you as follow-up to answer it. And that would be the best advice I can give. And do go to the website and listen to that interview. I think you'll find it quite enlightening.
All right. Well, thank you again, Scott. And his website is up on the screen, so if you're interested in that, it's right up there for you to see. You can check out all of our previous BOSS webinars on demand by visiting our website, thealternativeboard.com, and you just click on Webinars section at the top. You can also register for our August session there very soon, and it will be on the subject of branding. Thank you, everyone, again for joining today, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.